Hello and welcome back to Get in Focus with myself, Jackie Stinsman. I'm your host and I'm here with Jay Cassario today. He is the owner and photographer for Twisted Oaks and also a brand ambassador for Leica. Thank you so much for being on the show today, Jay.
Thanks for having me, Jackie. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So I wanted to talk about first Twisted Oaks. When did it start?
So Twisted Oaks started, I would have to say probably now 4 years ago. I don't know the exact date.
Okay.
Once you get this many years into it, as you know, everything becomes sort of a blur. But
yes.
It was probably around 6 years ago that I started my first company with my wife.
Okay.
It was called Cassario.
Okay.
We started doing weddings, and we both were just starting to get into photography. Mm-hmm. We had certain goals in mind of what we wanted to do, mm-hmm. and we really wanted to do things differently than how a lot of other photographers in the area and across, you know, the country that were doing things. Mm-hmm. And basically, a couple years in, mm-hmm. we decided we didn't want to be shooting weddings till we were in our 50s or 60s. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of different ways you can go about, you know, kind of a game plan or an end plan to photography. Mm-hmm. And ours was just to build a bigger studio.
Absolutely.
I had good friends that are on the West Coast.
Okay.
And they are the owners of Lynn & Jersa Photography.
Okay.
They own SLR Lounge,
mm-hmm.
which is a big educational site, for
mm-hmm.
any of you that don't know that. Early on into my photography, they asked me to write for them.
Awesome.
And I got to become good friends with the owners, and they kind of took me under their wing. Mm-hmm. And when I had mentioned I wanted to kind of go in a different direction than what I was doing with Cassario, mm-hmm. they kind of gave me all the positives and negatives to bringing on associates. Mm-hmm. And it was, you know, pretty intense, mm-hmm. and it kind of almost made me not want to do it. Mm-hmm. But me and my wife decided to push forward with it.
Good.
Pi from Lynn & Jersa, he was kind of a mentor for me and mm-hmm. helped me kind of get things started. And that's basically how the associate program started. Mm-hmm. It was just a way of kind of planning for the future, growing our studio, mm-hmm. but at the same time, we really wanted to keep things all within one brand, mm-hmm. all with the same kind of mindset, and be very careful about the photographers that we brought on to represent us.
That's awesome.
And you know, now we're in our third full year of wedding season, mm-hmm. doing this. Mm-hmm. And last year we shot 120 weddings. This year we're going to shoot around 130. And it really has been an awesome experience.
That's awesome.
Yes.
Now, how do you find those associates that work well with your brand and also work well with your clients?
So that was the tough part, because with a mentor like somebody like Pi, mm-hmm. they were years and years into this, and they had given me this kind of schedule to go by where you bring somebody on, mm-hmm. you have them second shoot, you have mm-hmm. them edit for you. You don't actually let them shoot a wedding for 2 or 3 years mm-hmm. into it. Mm-hmm. Well, I didn't want to wait 2 or 3 years. I wanted to get things kind of, you know, I wanted to get the ball rolling, and yes. I wanted to get people in here shooting, mm-hmm. But at the same time, being very careful.
Yes.
So I sort of handpicked a couple local photographers that mm-hmm. I knew how they shot, and I followed their work without them knowing it for a little while. And I approached them about, hey, what are your thoughts on coming on board with us, mm-hmm. and, you know, giving it a shot. Mm-hmm. And, you know, we're new to this. We'll kind of work together to get things going. Mm-hmm. Luckily, both of them, which is Cecilia and Angela on mm-hmm. our team, they are still with us, and they're our 2 most popular photographers.
That's awesome.
It's worked out with both of them mm-hmm. awesome from the beginning to the end, all 3 years.
That's great.
And, you know, it was a little bit different than how they ran their own studios, mm-hmm. How we wanted to run ours with the whole, you know, keeping everything under one brand. Mm-hmm. How we worked with the clients was a little bit different. Mm-hmm. And luckily for us, mm-hmm. they're both extremely talented, and they were willing to adapt to how we did things.
That's awesome.
Yes.
And I'm sure you get tons of reviews from clients. How are they reacting to the associates?
That was the biggie, because there's a lot of wedding studios that have associate photographers, mm-hmm. and they have them for different reasons. They have mm-hmm. them for if they get booked up and they have overflow.
Yes.
They kind of wait for themselves to get booked, and then once they're filled up for a date, then they offer it to the second.
Yes.
I wanted to kind of keep everybody on the same page.
That's awesome.
And
I've never heard of that before. So
it is a little
really
different.
Great.
So we have different tiers of pricing,
Okay.
but we made it so that even if I'm available and somebody wants Cecilia, then I'm all for that.
That's great.
And they can book Cecilia, they can book anybody, not just, I don't just push myself and Sandy because we still shoot together, but everybody's available.
That's awesome.
Yes.
Team player there.
Exactly. And it's worked out really good because it is a little bit different than the other studios. And we also push that the clients get to meet them beforehand.
That's great, because a lot of times, at least what I have noticed with other studios is you'll have like a profile on the website and it'll say this is this, and a little video sometimes, but they don't actually get to meet that photographer until after booking. And I feel like as a client, I want to know who's going to be shooting my wedding before I even book. You know what I mean? Like I want to get to know them. And I know Cecilia's amazing, so shout out to Cecilia today. So I'm sure you guys are super busy. You said you have 130 weddings.
That's right.
So tell me, you talked a little bit about mentoring. How important is mentoring when you're trying to grow your business? How important do you think that is to get different opinions as well as, like you said, the pros and cons?
So one of the biggest questions that I get asked today is how I became or how I built such a successful studio in such a short amount of time.
Yes.
And I, relate a lot of that to the age that I started.
Okay.
I went to school for art, fine arts in college. I had an art background. My mom was a photographer.
Okay.
I knew photography, I knew how to work a camera, but the thing was, it wasn't until after she had passed, which is a whole other story, that I got into photography. And it is really a gift from her, because if she was still alive today, I wouldn't be here, I wouldn't be into photography. So I think at the age of 33, when I decided, hey, I'm gonna pick up a camera and venture into wedding photography and leave my cubicle job of working as an engineer.
Wow.
I think some of the things that I had learned with age and being in my 30s is I set out a lot of goals, and one of them was that I wasn't going to be bullheaded and just charge into this and think that I could do it all on my own. I really wanted to have a few select people that I looked up to help me. I wasn't going to be that guy who just said, I'm going to do everything by myself and I can do it. So I brought on a mentor, and it was for business, it was for, I looked up to the business that they have today, and they have, 30, 40 some photographers for them.
Nice. Wow.
Whether I get to that level or not, I'm not sure if that's my goal even, but it was just a great mentor to have. And I've had different mentors in different areas. I've mentored different photographers, but it was a big help for me. Because you run into so many different things early on, and even today I run into different things. And rather than guessing, or just going online and asking, in Facebook groups, you have somebody that you trust.
Yes, absolutely.
You know that, hey, I'm sure you've been through this before.
Yeah.
What advice do you have for me?
That's awesome.
And there have been times when I don't take that advice, but for the most part, at least I know what advice they're giving me. And it is, having a mentor, I think, was a big benefit to the success that we've had to this point.
That's awesome. And another thing you say about success, let's talk about outsourcing. How did you find certain editors or bloggers, or how does that work for you now?
So as we got busier, it was everything kind of, snowballed. And it took off a lot quicker than what we expected. We expected to bring on a couple of associates and they would maybe shoot 5 or 10 weddings. Last year was the second year and we shot 120 with 3 other photographers besides me and my wife. So all of a sudden now we had to make decisions on whether to bring on more photographers, where to put our time and effort, and where to put our priorities. That was a big part of not slowing down and keeping the growth going.
Absolutely.
So The biggest one was editing. I can't edit 130 weddings, but
You're right.
I built the brand around an editing style. And that was my biggest concern was I don't want to outsource because I don't want to lose that personal feeling to my editing that I loved so much.
Yes.
So I did. I went through editing companies and I worked with them and finally found one that was able to work with me for weeks.
That's awesome.
Of just teaching them how I edit, giving them my preset, sending them weddings, sending them back. I would critique things. And it worked out to where the first year, last year, they did all the associate weddings.
Awesome.
This was the first year that I'm starting to let them edit mine because of the amount of trust that I have for them
Yes.
and the work that they're doing.
Yes.
That frees up time for me to spend on SEO, on my website, for marketing, you know, Facebook posts, Instagram posts. But at the same time, blogging is huge.
It is. You're right.
And, you know, if you ever watch Shark Tank, you know, I always watch Shark Tank, and it's like you watch the different, you know, critiques that they make and advice that they give. And it's like, you know, they want to put their products in these hands of superstars and athletes and what's the word I'm looking for? Where they're on social media and they have a following, influencers.
Yes.
You know, they want to put their product in the hands of influencers, and that helps sell the product. And then, you know, viral stuff. Well, the more I noticed, the more that we blogged, the more that our work got shown. I couldn't keep up with blogging 120 weddings. So this is the first year I hired somebody to help with the blogging. I hired somebody to help with the album design, which is a biggie because it was two things I was doing still to myself. And that freed up time for me to do a lot of other things. And when you have, now we have 7 photographers, we have to kind of, I have to have the marketing in place to make sure we're getting enough inquiries to keep them busy.
Absolutely. You're right. You're right.
So,
That's awesome. Well, we will be right back with Jay Cassario.